Okay, everybody, we are back. I hope you guys enjoyed part one, kind of digging into this gun. Now here we are in part two, where I have done a substantial amount of work. I'm about 6 hours into this pistol, and we made a lot of headway. Made a lot of good headway, actually. So what I want to do is sort of just recap what I've done so far, and there will be more parts because we're not home yet. We still got a lot of work to do. We've sort of gotten it to like 85%. And now we got to start slowing down and creeping up on sort of our target dimensions and feel and everything like that. So let me just show you what I've got so far. So starting with the slide, we did substantial amount of work on the slide. We can start with the barrel, actually. So on the barrel, we got rid of the burr on the bottom, but I also noticed that there's just, it's hard to describe, but the barrel throat sort of went normal, had a hump in the middle, and then went around. And so I actually profiled this, and right here in the middle, it's actually got a bit of a dip in it now. Sort of like what Colt does with their barrels sometimes. You know, it's a very shallow version of that, but now this is profiled. It's very even. You can see if I shine the light on it. You can't see a bunch of waviness. This barrel's a mess, but it's better now. The bushing, basically, I just sort of cleaned up this edge and also put a very light chamfer on the corner here just because it was really beat up. It just seemed like somebody stuck this in a vise very haphazardly. Anyway, clean that up a little bit. It's going to look a lot better with some new finish on it. Getting to the slide, so, you know, this is not going to be perfect, and I have no illusion that I'm going to get it perfect. But we got it better, and better's enough for this pistol. This is not going to be some project that, you know, I want to put under a museum-grade light box because nobody's going to be impressed with that. But I did want to improve it because this slide was dramatically bad. So in part one, you saw how you have this line where we go from flat to round, and it sort of had a rise around the ejection port. And basically it looks like somebody with like a really aggressive like belt sander just kind of by hand just like hogged on it really hard, and it was very wavy. So I tried to even this line out here, and I got it pretty close. So what I had to do is bring down these two areas. You can see where the finish is gone. So that line's a little more uniform. Same thing up here. I wanted like just a straight line, and that's pretty close. Again, this is going to get refinished. Same thing here. There's just this very strange dip. There's also, I noticed while I was doing the work, like they didn't finish cutting all the slide serrations. And so it's missing one of the serrations. And then the ones here are just like, I don't know, man. I don't know what to think. It really looks like somebody just hogged away on it. But anyway, clean that up a little bit. We also worked on the breech bolt, and you can see now that breech bolt is nice and shiny and flat and smooth. I took off way more material than I wanted to, but it's still working. The disconnector's doing its job, so we're gonna say that's okay. The extractor. This was a challenge. So the extractor that was in it is a cast extractor. I don't know if you guys can see that cast mark in the middle. Very, very, very horrible extractor here. When I went to go tune it, so we had a few problems. Just let me start there. Right off the bat, the extractor had way too much tension on it. It was so much that I could barely get a cartridge in the slide to just test for extractor fit. It was like I felt like I was going to have to tap it in with a hammer, and that's not good. So it had too much tension. And when I went to go bend it, though, and just do the normal extractor tuning, it made a crunchy, it almost sounded like sand was in a gear. It was like this crispy, crunchy, ugly sound. And I said, okay, this extractor's toast. But really, I needed to do that as well because the extractor is actually too long. This area right here, it's just too long. It's sticking out too far. And so, you know, it's not behaving like it should during cycling. I would go to put a round in the chamber, and it did help when I, really took off a lot of material here on this bottom corner, but it was still basically, you can kind of see if I hold this brass, you see how far forward that hook is? It needs to be like this. And so that's what was happening, is when it's trying to feed, the hook is just too far forward. It's too long. So I happen to have a Wilson Combat bulletproof extractor. Yes, this junk pile pistol got a Wilson Combat extractor because that's what I had. So, it went in. I had to, add a few thousandths, maybe like 2 thousandths of tension to it. But now it is really nice. I also profiled the hook on there. It's feeding very, very smooth. So I'm still going to have to test fire it, but as of right now, that went really, really well. This part was actually extremely dramatic. I did have to slightly change the angle on the feed ramp. Now, I'm only showing you a very short clip of this because this is not something I want to put out there and show people how to do, because this is how you absolutely destroy your 1911. But yes, I did it. Yes, it worked. And so, yeah, it's not super hard to do. You just need to go really slow and do a lot of checks. So yeah, I actually had to reprofile and slightly change the angle of the feed ramp. Okay, so we did test in part 1 if generally the T-Sauce mainspring housing was going to work. It fit right in, and it did work. However, the width of the channels within the frame versus the width of this rail on the mainspring housing, there's just too much play. And so will the gun work? Yes, but what you're going to run into is while you're holding the pistol, there's going to be a rocking back and forth of the mainspring housing, and that you just don't want that. So what I did is I peened this rail in 4 quadrants. And you can see basically you're just putting a dent to where it pushes some steel out to the side and expanding the width of that rail, top and bottom on both sides. And that snugs the mainspring housing up. And so now, zero play. And then finally, I adjusted the Sear. It needed a pretty significant relief cut. Now, I have not yet tested it. I wanted to do that here, with you guys. I have not yet tested this with the last small adjustment that I did. So we're going to go ahead and throw it together and test that out. But the reason I did that is because I wanted to show you guys, when I took off all this material on the breech bolt, it brought up the breech bolt probably like 4 or 5 thousandths. And when I hold the pistol up, I can actually see light through there. So there's a pretty significant gap. And what we want to make sure that we're doing is that this disconnector is still popping up far enough and interfacing properly with the breech bolt to make sure that we don't have a multi-fire situation. Let's put it that way. But one of the ways that you can really ensure that your disconnector is doing its job is this middle spring right here. So if I install my leaf spring, then I take my mainspring housing and slide it up in there, watch what's going to happen. As I slide it up, that leaf spring is going to push down, and then those hands are going to elongate. They're going to slide up as I push up this mainspring housing. And so I'm just going to stop right there. Usually, I'm really just using this mainspring housing as a placeholder to push tension up on those springs and test them. But I wanted to show you guys, this is really important. This middle hand, I want to make sure that it's really positively pushing up right there on the bottom of the disconnector. Okay, I want to make sure it has really positive engagement and it's pushing that disconnector up as high as it can go to make sure that I'm getting positive contact with the breech bolt. And it's popping up nice. I've tested it, but I just wanted to point that out to you, that if you feel like your disconnector's right on the edge of not working, that's one thing you need to make sure you've done, is make sure that that middle leaf spring is pushed forward, tuned forward, so that it's pushing all the way up with all the length it's got available on that disconnector. All right, we're going to go ahead and reassemble the gun. Okay, so I've already done like function testing as far as feeding and extracting and all that stuff. Now we're testing out the trigger work that I've done. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to, hammer back. Safety is off. I'm going to pull the slide to the rear a bit. And basically what I'm trying to do right now, the disconnector is up in the channel on the breech bolt. I want to push past that. Okay, right there. I felt it engage the disconnect. I'm going to pull the trigger. I want to bring it back. That's a good sign. Okay, so if I would have done that, pull the slide back, engage the disconnector, pull the trigger, let it go home. If the hammer went home, my disconnector is not properly set up. Okay, now before I do anything, still got the trigger pressed. I'm going to push up on the hammer. Okay, it's not falling. Release. I have a nice positive reset. I'm going to do that exercise again. Nice positive reset. Okay. Okay, good. Disconnector's doing its job. Now the trigger. Oh, very nice. There's nothing to be upset about with that trigger. So I'm going to say that took 2 tries to get that relief cut right on the trigger sear. Very positive reset. 0 creep, push, 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 push. So this is a very good trigger. And keep in mind, this right now, this pistol is bone dry. There's not a lick of oil on it, nor do I want there to be, because it's going to be refinished here in short order. So I want to stop with any adjustments I do now, because once this thing gets lubricated, it's going to feel all the way different, right? So you don't want to fit everything dry. You put lube on it, and now it's like turbo fitted, and everything's too light. So right now, this feels excellent, actually. Like, that's a really good trigger. 0 creep. And I mean 0 creep. Fit is good. Short trigger's good. No play in the mainspring housing. Everything is working. Half cock is good. I'm not jumping off half cock. Full cock is good. All right. Engage the safety. Make sure all my safeties are working. Everything's working, man. This is, right now, I'll be honest with you guys, this gun feels great. Like, it's very loosey-goosey. The slide's a mess. All that good stuff. But for a GI pistol, if you handed this to me blindfolded and said, how's this feel? I'd say that feels like a really well put together GI pistol. Next phase is I need to test fire this. So I'm going to try to squeeze that in, a quick range trip here in the next few days. And we'll take it to the range. I'm not going to lube it. I'm not even going to put grips on it. I'm going to shoot it just like this. And all I want to do is make sure that it runs 2 magazines. If I can get 2 magazines, because really if you shoot more than that, you're going to start to get it hot. You're introducing carbon, and you're going to start getting failures that are going to tell you a story that isn't happening in terms of your build quality. So 2 magazines is sufficient. If I can get that sorted out, I'm going to check my extraction, look at the cases, all that good stuff. If everything's working, guys, we're really close to finishing this gun in very short order. So this is a ton of work. I'm really having to tune quite a lot because it's a very rough gun, but I'll say it's coming together very nicely, very quickly, and it's going to turn out to be a good little range gun. So there we are. That is part 2, guys. Stay tuned for part 3. Well, that'll be our range session and sort of our final work, getting this thing all set up. And I think I'll squeeze into part 3, refinishing and showing what that thing looks like to crown it. So there you go. Hope you guys enjoyed that. This has turned out to be a lot of fun. I'm really happy with how it's going. What do you guys think? Well, I know everybody's going to probably suggest you need to put this part on it and this part. Look, I don't want to spend any money on this. It's already got good springs across the board. The parts are pretty solid. The only thing I've done to this so far as adding anything to it, is the extractor. Everything else is staying as is because it's pretty solid. And of course, my leftover T-Sauce mainspring housing and trigger, but I already had those, and those were like bought and paid for already. So Anyway, there we go, guys. I'd say we're 90% there on the fit of the gun. Got to get the test fire, and then we'll keep going. So hope you guys enjoyed that. We'll see you on part 3.